7 years ago, the class of 2009 sat in the very same place that all of you are sitting in right now. It's hard to believe just how fast 7 years have gone by. The faculty will remember how special that class of 2009 really was, and it's a tremendous honor to be introducing the top student from that special class to all of you today. Helen White spent 6 years crossing back and forth from Vermont to Stanstead. Yes, she was a lifer, and by the end of her grade 12 year, Helen had accumulated numerous academic accomplishments, while also playing soccer, hockey, rugby, debating at the national level throughout her state, as well as being a prefect and a good friend to all. In her senior write-up, Helen wrote, "Stanstead has taught me that people can change the course of your life in the blink of an eye," referring to the amazing friends that she made along her journey. In fact, I'd say that Helen changed the lives of everyone around her too. She was a special student, sharp, cerebral, witty, not your typical teenager. 11 when she started grade 7, and 16 when she finished grade 12. Now try and imagine a 12-year-old advocating for Howard Dean as the future president of the United States, writing about the inaccuracies of the Eisenhower administration after World War II in his free time, openly criticizing the Bush administration on a daily basis, and protesting the Iraq War on the weekends downtown Newport, Vermont. To put it mildly, Helen could argue her way out of just about anything. I may have been her academic advisor, but she sure advised me on whatever came to her mind. After Stanstead, Helen spent 4 years at Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine, majoring in physics with a minor in government and legal studies. She graduated cum laude Phi Beta Kappa and published her first article entitled "Gravity Darkening and Brightening in Binaries" in the Astrophysical Journal in July 2012. She also carried on her love for sport by playing on the women's varsity rugby team while at Bowdoin. After she graduated Bowdoin, at the age of 20, still not old enough to legally drink, Helen spent a couple of years working in Boston, Massachusetts for Pascal Rose as a litigation paralegal, before ultimately deciding to attend Yale Law School, where she's expected to graduate in 2018. She's currently working for the United States Attorney's Office in Alexandria, Virginia, as an intern in the criminal division, working on issues affecting federal criminal prosecutions. An impressive resume, I'd say, for a young woman who's only 23 years of age. At least now she can finally legally have a glass of Chardonnay. Now the last line of Helen's senior write-up says, "Until we meet again." Well, that time has come. And I think I can speak for the entire faculty in saying just how thrilled we are to welcome Helen back to campus as our guest speaker here today. Please join me in offering a warm welcome to Helen White, class of 2009.
Morning, everybody. I want to thank James Rioux for a lovely introduction. I'm more of a beer drinker myself nowadays, and I want to thank Mr. Wolf for inviting me to speak today. It's truly been a homecoming, and it's a pleasure to come back and see everybody who makes this place so special. I asked a couple of my friends yesterday if they had any insight about what makes Stanstead different from other places we could have gone to high school, and both of them independently said that it was the relationships that you build with the teachers that last long beyond your time here. And I couldn't agree more. So I want to thank the many teachers and staff members who are a part of making this place my home, James included. And I would be willing to bet that the students and graduates here today want to do the same thing. So I'd like to take a moment and have the students give a round of applause for the faculty and staff for all that they do here. So the traditional role of a graduation speaker is to impart life lessons learned on the path to success. And at 23, despite all of the wonderful things in that introduction, I'm still someone who reads articles entitled 8 Things Successful People Do Before Breakfast. So I don't really think I can fill that But I'm not going to tell you to do any of that today. Instead, I'm going to ask you to keep doing 3 things that Stanstead has already taught you. 3 things that I've found are very easy to forget once you leave this place. I'm going to ask you to focus on growth, build community, and embrace difference. You already know how to do these things, and I know that because you're a part of this community, and I'm a part of this community, and I know what this school teaches its students. So what do I mean by focus on growth? It means stop focusing on being the best and start focusing on being better than you were yesterday. I was lucky to learn this early on from the famous Rioux. You may not believe that it used to be possible to join the girls' hockey team and barely be able to skate, but it once was, and I did. I knew, and I learned quickly, that I was never going to be the best player on the team, or a college hockey star, or score any game-winning goals. So instead, my coaches, including Doobie, encouraged me to focus on improvement. Nailing the stop, the crossover, the backwards crossover, the slap shot. Well, I never did learn how to do slap shot, but most of it I learned along. And the point is that if I measured success by comparing myself to my teammates like Ms. Sharman, I was going to be constantly disappointed. So instead, my coaches helped me focus on improving, and that meant I had a lot of little victories to celebrate. And without those victories, it would have been hard to stay motivated and keep working my hardest. But my academic life was another story. I spent a lot of time trying to be the best, and I often got a lot of validation. But when I started at Yale, I was nervous about how I'd measure up. My classmates were brilliant and had gone to the best universities around the world, and I was nervous. But then I remembered none of these people studied astrophysics, so at least I'd be the best at that, and I got to keep feeling smug a little longer. That was a terrible idea. The second day of orientation, I met an accomplished woman from Alberta who was in my class. She already had a PhD and a handful of national prizes in no other subject than astrophysics. There was no point. From that moment on, I stopped worrying about trying to be the best at anything in the law school, and instead focused on all of the opportunities to learn that were headed in my direction. This attitude took all the pressure off trying to show off or impress my teachers with what I already knew, and made it a lot easier to acknowledge just how smart and accomplished my classmates are. And that means I get to learn from them, and it's a lot easier to do so. So instead of wondering, am I the best student or athlete, ask yourself at the end of each day, did I learn something new? Do I understand a little better? Did I run faster than at yesterday's practice? Focus on growth, build community, embrace difference. I left Stanstead and sought out small, close-knit communities, but nothing compares to what I experienced here. At Bowdoin and Yale, everyone knows everyone. At Stanstead, everyone knows where everyone else is at a given moment, which is a little different. While I was living in Boston, I didn't know anything about my neighbors. We would ride together in the elevator in silence, go to our respective doors, sometimes just across the hall from each other, and not know each other's names. I'd see the same people every day at the coffee shop in my office building, but I'd never say hi or introduce myself. These people were my community, but I hardly knew them. Having a community matters because they help you reach your highest hopes and help you through your toughest times. At Stanstead, as you heard, I love to debate. And while my friends liked the debate club, most of them were not a huge fan of the tournaments that we would go to every month or two. That said, no matter what, without fail, I always had a partner. Whether that partner knew me, whether that partner's first language was English, whether that partner cared at all about doing well in debate for themselves, they went because they knew it was important to me to go and to accomplish the goals that I had set for myself. That is how community helps you reach your goals, and you all have learned to do that for each other. But loving debate tournaments in middle school and high school can sometimes lead to getting picked on. Admittedly, it happened very rarely at Stanstead, but on the few occasions it did, sometimes someone I barely knew, would always stand up for me. Whether it was an 8th she was going to keep talking to me, even if I did use big words. Or a boy on the hockey team who I barely knew telling his roommate that he didn't think it was cool to make fun of me. Somebody always had my back. In a far better written commencement speech, writer George Saunders urged graduates to err on the side of kindness. There is no better way to describe what Stanstead teaches the members of its community. But community takes work, and this one is no different. You all have spent almost every waking moment together over the past year. You eat breakfast together. From morning to afternoon, you have assembly, class, break, class, lunch, class together. Then you're off to sports together. You have dinner together. You spend all day together, but somehow you still end up late for signing because you had to have one last laugh together. You go to sleep, you wake up, and you do it all again together. Stanstead forces you into community, but when you leave, it will be easy to stand silent in the elevator rather than awkwardly extending your hand and introducing yourself. But I urge you to put in the effort, because you know, from being here, that having a community where you have each other's backs makes all the difference. So focus on growth, build community, and embrace difference. You each have had the distinct privilege of counting as classmates and friends, people from all around the globe, rich, poor, and in between. During grade 11, as a prefect in Kobe, I lived with a girl from Taiwan and a girl from Mexico. We had all the typical roommate problems, snoring, snoozing, messiness, and noise, but none of this was because of our races or nations of origin. The thing that surprised me most when I started at Bowdoin was that everyone was speaking English. When you walk down the hall at Stanstead, it's like a mini United Nations. You hear English, French, Mandarin, Spanish, Japanese, Korean, and many other languages. You're not nervous when you don't understand every word that's said around you. It's normal. You have learned to embrace difference. Difference and the other are easily stigmatized and cast aside. In Europe, right now, right-wing political parties are feeding on residents' fears of migrants fleeing the conflict in Syria. Today, this very day, in the United Kingdom, Britons will vote to decide whether to leave the EU, in part because of rising anti-immigrant sentiment. In my own country, the United States, he who must not be named is leading a movement to wall us off from our neighbors and bar members of an entire religion from entering the country. Now, more than ever, we need young people like you to go out into the world embracing the many things that make us different as people. To the graduates, when you leave here, your world will become smaller in certain ways. Mine became whiter, wealthier, and more American. Resist the shrinkage. Seek out people who are different from you. Use what you have learned at Stanstead to build meaningful relationships across divides. For those staying at Stanstead, engage with what makes you different from your classmates. And not just by gaining an appreciation for Mexican candy or learning to swear in 8 different languages. you all know what I'm talking about. Learn about the history of your classmates' home countries. Explore topics that might be uncomfortable. Don't be afraid to ask questions that might be ignorant or dumb. The culture of mutual respect that you've built in this community means that you can talk through difficult questions with your friends and learn from them. If you were all the same, you couldn't learn from each other. In closing, congratulations to the graduates. No matter whether you clean up on prizes today or where you head next, you each have learned important values. Values that you may find are easily forgotten once you leave. I urge you not to forget what you already know. Focus on growth, build community, and embrace